All right. So welcome everyone here in New York, everyone who's joining us online. Thanks for coming. I'm Greg, and I'm the founder of FanAmp. It's an app, it's a community that's reimagining the way that Formula One fans engage around the sport. We're super excited to have this panel together today. Josh had actually come to me for a bit of context. He came and we were talking about this because he's felt very lucky to be in the position that he's in, finding his way into motorsport. And something that really resonated with me in my professional career, I've never really known like what the North Star is, where I wanted to be when I grow up. And I've always learned from these kinds of conversations, hearing from people who have lived it, whether they're early in their career or have been through many different roles. And I've always found it really valuable to recalibrate. And so we wanted to put something together that would illuminate the path within motorsports, because there's a lot of different opportunities. Talk to many of you about your different roles. And so I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this panel. So with that preamble, we're super excited to get started in it. I think the best way to kick it off is a really simple question, just who you are, what your background is, what your role is, and then we'll dig into the nitty gritty. And so maybe, Alex, we can start with you and then we'll do a round robin.
Okay, yep. I'm Alex. I am a race engineer with Alfa Romeo, currently working with Valtteri Bottas. So broad job description, I am the guy you hear in his ear on the radio, managing the car crew, so the mechanics, also the engineers that work with us, responsible for what we do with the setup of the car, and yeah, the running of the car during the race weekends and tests as well.
Jess, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jess. I'm a data engineer with Red Bull. I've been in this role about 3 years, and that involves looking at all the data that we get from the car, from CFD, from the tunnel, making sure that it's recorded accurately and stored so that it can be analyzed by various different groups. I work closely with the software team as well, who make all our in-house software that's used on the football.
Very cool. Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh. Currently working as a software engineer for Hitech. I'm currently in my 4th season in motorsport. So I previously worked at SF1 and have now moved over to Hitech, working in all formulas up to Formula One at this point. And my day-to-day role really is developing applications and software tools for race engineers, data engineers, and research and development users throughout the team, so they can use work to their best of their ability in making the car faster, basically.
And George, you're at Hitech as well. Maybe we'll go to you.
I am, yes. So my name's George Harvey. I've been in motorsport for 24 years. I started at Benetton. I'm head of research and development here. My role currently, and I also look after the design office. My role is more structural testing of materials side of life. But I did have a life as one of those guys on the old pit stop crews and things like that for quite a few years. Yeah, it's all cool. Really.
All right, and last but not least, Shai.
Hey guys, I am Sham, otherwise known as Shai. I work for Alfa Romeo F1 Team Stake. I am their senior social and content producer. I manage the social channels and create all the content that you will see on across their social channels across every platform. Is the third team that I've worked across in F1. I used to work with Lewis Hamilton and then moved over to McLaren, and now I'm with Alfa Romeo.
And by the time we're done with this, we're gonna have another team.
Exactly. Hitech, maybe.
No, all of us. Awesome. All right. Well, let's dig into it. I think the first question to really dive in is just at what point did you decide that this was the right career path for you, the right field? And then what was your path to where you are today? So whether it be through classes or something extracurricular, like what kind of got you into the seat that you're in? And maybe Jess, we could start with you for that one.
Yeah, sure. So I've been going to races since I was a kid. I think my first race was in 2004 in France, where Schumacher did about 4 pit stops to win the race. Absolutely loved it since then. But it took a really long time for me to think that this could actually be a career. I think partly because, especially when I was going at that point, you could, count the number of women you saw in a weekend on one hand. And frankly, it hasn't got a whole lot better since then. But so growing up, I always loved maths and science. I decided to do a physics degree. I thought maybe I would stay in academia. But I got the opportunity to go and work at CERN and decided that probably wasn't the path for me. I went to Boston University, so I was in the States at the time, and I worked at various different startups. I learned coding, I did data analysis, and then moved to data engineering. And then I think it was actually an interview with Ruth Buscombe that I saw when she was at Alpha that I thought that sounds quite similar to the kind of analysis that I do. And it made me look into all the different opportunities. I think I didn't realize how many different options there really were, especially in software and data engineering. So then with a bit of persistence and looking around at a lot of the different teams, I ended up in this job at Red Bull.
That's awesome. And George, when we were speaking about this, you said you started on, I believe, the trucking side, and then have held many hats. So maybe we can hear from you and your path.
Sorry, if that was for me, that was very broken. I didn't quite get that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you fine now.
Okay. I was saying you had also talked when we were speaking one-on-one. You were saying you started with the trucking crew and have since moved through to now heading research and development. So just wanted to start or pass the question to you and say, what was your start? Like, when did you decide this was the career path for you? And then how did you navigate to where you are today?
Yeah, okay. So I joined Her Majesty's Armed Forces in 1985. I was in the Royal Engineers for a fair amount of years. I then left that and joined the fire service. But coming from an engineering background, I had that typical way into motor racing where somebody said, "Hello, mate, do you want a job?" And then all of a sudden, I ended up in Nürburgring. And I was, for the first 8 months of my career, I was a truckie because it was the easiest way in. So if you're looking for paths in, there's a lot of ways in. So then I went into sub-assembly and I ended up as a hydraulics technician. And they wanted someone to use a piece of equipment one day, which I did. I ended up being a chartered engineer in that. And then over time, I started at Benetton. I went through the Renault, British American Racing, Honda, to Braun, left for a short space of time and went to Team Lotus Caterham, then Marussia, then Manor. So I've seen them come and go. But for the last few, I was in R&D and a little bit of design. And that's where I'm sitting today. Only now I sit in 4, 3, and 2. So I don't have 2 cars anymore. I have 19.
It's a lot to manage, I'm sure.
Certainly is. Yes.
What were through that journey, like you said, finding an easy way, like a good place to just settle in and to get started and get going. Is there anything that you want to share, any advice or thoughts, like as takeaways for what helped you continue to climb into new roles that you may not have started with the experience doing, but you're clearly doing today?
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, and I'm one of those, as I'm known here as a Swiss Army knife. I think there is a misconception, and I must put that out there. The guys around in this talk, it's a very not a set career path, but it's very channeled. The advantage that I've had because of the roles that I have taken, the roles allow you to use your mouth. And because of that, you can get around team after team after team. You can walk up and down the paddock all day. And it allows you to spread your wings, let's say. And because of that, it opens up it opens a lot of avenues up. Let's just put it that way. And How I ended up sitting in R&D as the head of research and development, I don't really know. A bit of hard work here and there, but they come. These roles do come. You've just got to keep your eye out for them, and they appear. They don't always appear in Formula One. So when I interview, when somebody says they want to be in Formula One, I usually pull them back and say, you're coming off a normal walk of life. And if you're coming from a normal walk of life, what's wrong with F4 or 3 or 2 or LMP or LMDH? You'll get to F1. I get my offers to go back into F1. But there's a lot of other avenues, a lot of easier avenues.
Yeah, I think for myself, when I was looking to leave banking, the path that I wanted to go into, when I would talk to people, they would say, well, you don't look like this, you don't act like this, so you can't come here. And the way that I took that was, great, then you'll find the side door. And so you go and you take a different path. And I think it's really telling, right, to say that you can aspire to something, but there's so much opportunity that's out there that may not have been on that like straight and narrow path that you knew. And so finding those opportunities and being a hard worker really pays off for great opportunity.
Yeah, okay. So like probably most of the guys that I'm around in the screen now, I too went straight into Formula One. I was with Jarno Trulli and Jensen Button for my start out. And yes, and so we're all the same. I totally agree. But you've got to remember, I'm at school. You know, this is a school. I have 14, 15-year-old drivers getting in F4 cars. I've got mechanics of 21 years of age, you know, future engineers, controls, and the like. And just about our turnover, really everyone that turns over leaves here and goes to Formula One. But they go with a very good grounding.
Yeah, I think it's important. Shai, you mentioned multiple hats that you've worn as well, or working for different people. Like, what's your experience like with this?
So I took a very weird entry into F1. I went through sort of PR marketing agencies side. So I worked across brands like Monster Energy and within PR agencies that managed a lot of other brands that sort of had their foot into motorsports and action sports. Which is what I wanted to do. So through Monster, I ended up on photo shoots and stuff with the Mercedes team and a bunch of other walks of motorsport, be it drifting or rallycross or two-wheel MotoGP and whatnot. And I sort of just found that this pathway sort of opened to work across motorsports, work across F1, and so I sort of fell into this one because I just before joining Lewis, I was at a record label doing music, and so I knew I wanted to do. I knew I was good at like digital marketing. I could market a brand, but I had too many passions, and I didn't know how to narrow that passion down into one avenue. I didn't want to box myself into a niche, but I knew motorsports was always sort of at the top of that list. So I found this opportunity that opened, and through the work that I did through Monster, it was sort of word of mouth. Lewis's team were looking for someone who was dedicated to his content and socials. That sort of just opened that door for me, and then it was sort of just like a 2-part interview process where it was like, meet with Lewis's manager, who at the time was Mark Hines, and then the second interview was to meet Lewis and do like a personality test. To make sure the idea was that I'd be spending a lot of time with him, so we've got to make sure that we clicked, that he liked me, or the other, we worked well together, whatever way that might go. So yeah, I took a very, very weird approach into it, but it landed me here. I think once my foot was in, it was just more so, how do I keep this going now? How do I, keep going up and up and up? But now it's got to Formula One. It's like, I don't know what else is next now, I feel like I've done a few teams and stuff. So yeah, that's my next challenge.
I love that. So maybe sort of on a variation of that question, and Alex, can start with you, would be, how did you break into the industry? And so I'd love to sort of hear still about deciding when this was the right thing for you, but like the action that you took to really kick it off.
So actually, like Jess, I was studying physics at university. I originally wanted to go into finance in the city, but I tried it, didn't really get on with it, and I thought, what am I passionate about? And yeah, I loved F1 watching it, so I thought, let's give it a go. Studying physics then wasn't the easiest to find that entry point. All the jobs that I applied for was obviously kind of technical engineering style jobs, but a lot of times wouldn't even get to the interview stage just because they said, look, we want someone that studied engineering or that has experience already in engineering. I took the slightly strange approach of writing letters. So I just sent a cover letter and a CV, and I took the name of every technical director of F1 teams and just sent these letters off to them. Like this, I actually got responses at least, at least from HR, or they all the technical directors had the kindness to at least pass them somewhere down through the chain, through the teams. And I got a lucky break that Caterham, they were looking to hire some fresh graduates just with no experience to come and have a look at data with a fresh set of eyes. And yeah, after an interview, asked me to start within 5 days, which was a bit tricky, but yeah. And then I found that once you're inside the industry, whatever side route you manage to take, then it's a lot easier. Once you've got your first job in F1, suddenly any job you apply for, you definitely get a response. And most of the times you'll get called to an interview. Yeah, also as George said, I mean, you walk up and down the paddock once you get trackside, and yeah, you meet people very quickly. And then conversations just happen. Yeah, there's many ways into this.
Yeah, that's super creative though. I think like the sort of like the grit, the hustle, the tenacity, and the creativity, just do it, right? And do something that stands out, I think is ultimately what helps so many people. That's awesome. Does anyone else have any other things like that? I know, Josh, you maybe had mentioned your start.
Yeah, so I had kind of a start similar to Jess and Alex. I was at Sheffield Hallam, and I was dead set into getting into the games industry. My degree's in games development, and it's tailored towards programming for games and 3D modeling within that space. I think it was around my final year. I had a few second thoughts after hearing some sort of stories about the industry in games, and I thought it's not really the life that I really wanted to go into. So I ultimately took a step back and thought, what is it that I really want to be involved in? What am I really passionate about? And all my life, I've been a fan of motorsport, mostly on two wheels, I'll be perfectly honest. But I've always loved Formula One as well. I'd say I think my first race was watching 2002 Australia. That was a fantastic race to see. And afterwards, I essentially just went on the team's websites and had openings. Sent off my CV and cover letter as well. And within a few weeks, I was in front of some people for an interview at Haas. As Alex mentioned, sorry, not Alex, Shai mentioned, a two-stage process. So I had one with the people who would be my boss, and then with the team principal, Gunter, and the director of engineering, Ayo Komatsu. And then after that, within the week, I was being offered a position, which was fantastic. But going back to what Alex said, once you're in, you're winning one, and things come a lot easier. People do know who you are. When you come to apply with jobs, they see the F1 and motorsports on your CV, and it's definitely a real help if you want to continue within motorsports.
And we started the conversation before everyone joined, like asking how the weekend went. And I know Alex and Shai, you can get back into the talk, but I'm just curious, like what the lifestyle is like, how you go the trade-offs of the different roles. I come from a background where Monday through Thursday you're on the road and then you're home Friday. So just want to hear like both sides of the coin and whether there's a certain point in your career where one's right or wrong. Like, how do you think about that? It's probably not wrong. It's just preference. Maybe Alex and Chad will start with you since you guys were on the road and we can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. When I started, and yeah, once I was in Caterham, realized I wanted to kind of move towards the trackside team, and then eventually moved to Sauber now, Alpha. It was, the calendar was 17 races. Now we're up to 23, 24 races. It's a lot of time away, and like you said, a lot of traveling jobs. Normally it's Monday to Thursday away and you're home for the weekend. For us, it's almost the opposite. Our mechanics will fly on a Tuesday, we fly out on a Wednesday, and we come back normally, either Sunday night or Monday. Sometimes even arriving home Tuesday, and then you have 1 or 2 nights at home and you're off again. We're about to go into a triple header, nearly 3 weeks on the road. It's definitely a challenge, and it's something I think also the teams are trying to deal with. For sure, you can't expect people to carry on being away for 25 weekends a year for 10, 20 years. It's not reasonable. So for sure, it's going to change and people will start to rotate. But there are many jobs that don't require this level of travel. So even if you want to get into motorsport, doesn't mean you need to be up for doing this. It puts some pressures on your life. But if it's what you want to do, then it's worth the sacrifice.
Shai, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, look, I mean, I think Alex covered it, but I think it's, it also depends what team you go for and which angle of motorsport you go into. Obviously, we're speaking from an F1 perspective, but it is a very tiring, career to have. There's some days that you will love. There are other days that you will not love. You are on the road a lot of the time. There's, like Alex says, there's a triple header coming out. I think a lot of the team are also staying out so that they don't have to come back to, European time zone and then flip back again. But yeah, I think it's slowly and surely getting to the point where, people are rotating in their roles. Alex and I have done all the races for the past 2 years now. So it's, it's a lot. But I guess if you love the sport and you love what you do, you keep doing it and hope that, the teams themselves start to realize. I know McLaren was quite good at this, actually. They, toward the end, when I was with them, they were massively hiring, not to try and outdo other teams in terms of numbers, but genuinely just to try and make sure they're rotating their teams, because they realize the impact that this has on you physically, but also mentally. You're away from your friends and family a lot, and it's hard. It essentially takes over your whole life. So it's something that you find a lot of people do for a few years, and then they maybe decide, actually, I want to take a bit more of a role back at the factory or back at home. So there is a lot of change that happens in F1 over the years, over the year itself, even, with people sort of jumping in and out and seeing, okay, you know what, now I've done my time. I've done every race for this many years. There's only a few new races added to the calendar. It's like you've seen and done it all. Now you need to balance up the other side, with having some sort of quality of life. But yeah, it's tough. I'm not going to beat around the bush with that one. It's definitely strenuous.
One of the things that I did appreciate about that lifestyle was who I work for, they gave you the opportunity to go somewhere else, like when you were flying home. So instead of flying back to New York, you could fly somewhere else. If you were more senior, you could bring family. Is that something that the teams do to help alleviate some of that, or that makes the experience feel different for you?
The one thing that they do, and it takes a lot of planning, just because these the travel management teams have to sort of look quite far ahead when they're booking all these flights and whatnot. They do allow you a window to say, okay, when I'm coming back from, or say for instance after Brazil, I don't want to come back to the UK or to Europe. I want to go to America or Mexico or wherever, just to stay there for the week, and then before we fly to Vegas. But again, there's a very short window to get this request in, so it doesn't always work out to plan, but they are accommodating in that sense that they do allow that option to be able to go somewhere. So it's like it's a holiday, but it's not at the same time. You obviously still have to work, but yeah, if you've got the option, I guess, as long as you're close to your phone or close to emails. Yeah, there is an option. I'm not too sure how it works with other teams in that regard. Whether there's, I assume it works very similar. There's probably like an approvals process or cost management.
Yeah, I mean, we stayed out in Japan after the race for a week, and actually had friends at Ferrari, Mercedes, loads of teams that did the same. It was quite nice, little community of F1 in Japan on holidays.
That's awesome. How about Jess, Josh, George? How did you think about that travel?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I am factory based. I really like that. I'd like the opportunity to travel at some point. I think like a lot of people would, but I spend a lot of time, on the other side in the operations room. And what's really nice about that is that you get the opportunity to be really close to the racing and be really involved, but you get to go home to your own house at the end of the day. And I think, what these guys said about rotation, I think that's key, and that's going to be key to the future. I'm not sure whether I'd want to do every single race, but I know that I would love to rotate in and out of races.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jess on that. I'm factory based as well. So I come in, I do what I need to do, and I can go home, basically. However, I really would like to travel just to see the world and experience things from the other side of the garage, and get an idea about how the likes of Alex and other members of staff are using the tools that I'm developing. But going back to the intensity of things, it can still be quite intense when it comes to triple headers, for example. So I remember when I was at Haas, I had quite a few triple headers because I was working through the COVID situation, and they kind of bulked as many races in together as they could. You would have everybody come back on a Tuesday sort of time. We'd debrief, get everything sorted, and we'd need bug fixes out and ready for the next race on, Thursday night or Friday morning at the very latest. So it can get quite strenuous there. But if you've got the passion for it and you love what you do, it's so rewarding when you actually see the people using your tools. For example, I worked on a tire pressure system at Haas, and seeing the data come in on my end of the screen whilst watching, Kevin and Roman go around, that was so rewarding to me, to be honest.
I love that. George, is there anything you want to add on the travel piece?
So I guess, yeah, why not? So I did 2.5 years, 3 years on the test team when we used to have test teams, which was 4 or 5 months in Jerez and Barcelona before we would have our Christmas party at the track. Everyone in the screen I'm looking at now, with respect, are all sitting here and they love their jobs. So when you hear them say it's hell, it's this, it's that, don't listen to them. They love it, or they wouldn't be here. And furthermore to that, I then did a further 10 years on the race team in Formula One and took a bit of a factory backseat role. And I do agree with Jess. I then went back on the road again because it's that bad. I had to do it again just to make sure how bad it was. And did a further, however, many years before I then did hang up my boots in Marussia and Manor. And I totally agree with Jess on that. one now. I really like to watch my cars go around the track because every bit of them are mine now. And I'm a bit of a carbon fiber weirdo. So I like to see them contorting and twisting as they go around the track. And Josh, don't worry, you'll be going to the track, so you can shut up. Yeah, but I do admit, as you all feel, and I do feel for you all that travel, you do get tired of looking at the same hotel room. I love Japan just like you guys do, and so does my eldest son. We all do. But they all become, you know, and then one day give that to someone else and come and join us in the factory. It's really quite cool.
I love that. I think on a related question to this, like, I've always looked at careers as money is obviously an important aspect of the job, but that's not everything. I think you both have sort of hit on it a bit, you and Josh, George, about some of the unique elements and things that are just feel really rewarding in the work. And so I'm just curious, is there one thing from each of you that stands out as a really unique and rewarding factor of this work that sits aside from the compensation that goes into the bank?
I think for me, I'd say the people. I'm an ex-soldier, and everyone on this screen, everyone in this factory that I sit in now, and the whole fraternity are the closest thing to family you could ask for. That's the one thing that sticks out for me.
Yeah, I agree with George on that. Working with people and drivers as closely as I do, and just maintaining friendships with people around paddock, it's lovely. It really is.
Yeah, if I could jump in related to that, when you see everyone working together and the fact that you can trust everyone to do their absolute very best, you know, everyone is absolutely on top of their game. When that all comes together and it works perfectly, it's so incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, I think it's that teamwork element and really feeling that you are part of in the end, a sports team. And when everyone celebrates the victories together, it's a special moment.
Yeah, I'm on board with all of you guys. I think it's the people, it's the fans, it's the whole experience. It's a very unique world. Obviously, George is saying, you know, it's obviously quite, you know, we do love what we do. It is a very tough job. I think not everyone can do it. I think it is rewarding when we can all celebrate together or experience this together.
Yeah, as a fan of the sport and someone who watches, like seeing the pit crews, I think is the most telling example. Just watching so many people come together and in 2 seconds disassemble and reassemble a car. I think it speaks to the coordination, all the effort that goes on, and obviously all the engineering talent that sits behind that. It's incredibly impressive. So I can see why that's, like, for all of you, the big part of this.
But even just between teams, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip that went round of two of our mechanics. I think when Alex was getting out the car, he was really faint in Qatar just due to the heat. It was incredibly hot and humid there, and there was a clip that was going around of two of the Alpha mechanics going over to help Alex. I think regardless of, you know, we race on track and we compete across just about everything, but at the end of the day, we are one big motorsport family in essence. You know, we're all very much on the same page. So it is, yeah, it's nice to know that it's not just within teams, it works across the entire paddock as well.
So we've got a room full of people who are very early in their career. We're going to take it to questions in a second, but wanted to ask one last one while we're collecting them, and that would be, if you could go back and give yourself advice before setting out on this path, is there one thing that's a takeaway, something that you wish you had thought about, or a door that is very clear now that you didn't know existed before that you would want to share with other people to help set them off on this journey?
I think I'd like to start with something that George said earlier, which is that, you know, whilst F1 is, you know, it is sort of in essence at the top, there are so many different streams and different avenues of motorsport. So just my advice would be don't pigeonhole yourself to F1. Don't try and just think that's it and that's the only goal. There are so many different series of motorsports and action sports or whatever sports you might want to get into that you can explore. And in essence, if you guys do want to end up in F1, that's a really clear path there. You know, experience is a huge thing in this industry, and people see that as a clear way in. But for me, I think had I one thing I would have told my younger self, I guess, is that stop looking at F1 first and maybe be okay with the other series that I was working in or working across or just about to step into, because now I look back and honestly some of the best times I had were in rallycross and BSB and two wheel, and there's so many other avenues I went into that were amazing, and I sort of maybe took for granted a little bit now that I've got a chance to look back. But yeah, there are other motorsports there to explore. So don't just gun for F1. There is a lot of people that you're competing against. Try and gain some really, really valuable experience in those lower divisions or other divisions rather. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, totally agree there. There's so many, and following on that, there's so many different avenues within a team that you don't necessarily realize are there. We have avenues for pretty much all sort of areas of engineering and software. I genuinely, when I was looking, didn't realize that software was as heavily involved as it is now. And, there's the commercial and PR areas, as well as travel management and HR as well. That it's a whole microcosm really within for a team. It's not just what you see on TV. There are so many other avenues that you can go down. So yeah, it's always good to research and see what's available really for what you really enjoy doing.
I don't know, really. If I was looking at myself as a younger self to tell myself now what to do differently, don't know. Maybe wouldn't have had that magic mushroom. No. Anyway, I think really, to be honest, I'm quite happy where I sit, really, and I'm glad and I'm happy how I got here. I will say though, I do, I don't know, 3 or 4 events at the I'm over here at Silverstone Circuit. I do go and judge the students' end of year projects for R&D and the electric garage doors and how they've converted a bike into a milk float. I don't know. Anyway, and I also attend the Motorsport College for the mechanics as well. And yes, seeing I'm looking at a race engineer above my little picture on this screen, there are 20 lead race engineers in Formula One. We have 20 odd race engineers here in High Tech itself. So you cannot look at Formula One as your start point. Yes, we all did. I suppose if I was going to change anything, I would have done my 4, 3 and 2 first, because I actually feel I've learnt more in 4, 3 and 2 than I did in 1. I still work currently with 2 Formula One teams anyway, and all I do is pick them up for their misdemeanors. So in this side of life, I can take a very good lead design engineer, which I do have, and Josh will back me up, and I've taught him to lay up composite chassis, for instance. Now, in a Formula One team, you'll have someone that will lay up a composite chassis and an engineer will go nowhere near it. And that's the difference. This is a school. This is a school and it teaches. And all my mechanics and engineers that have come out of here are all now placed in the likes of Alpine. I've got 4 at Red Bull. As you can see, the F3 car behind me and our F2 cars, we've got lots of cars liveried up in Red Bull because we're the junior team for them. Junior is the word. You know, you're coming out of uni, you're coming out of school, you're coming out of college. Start somewhere and then aim high. That would be what I would say to my former self.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think my advice would be maybe a bit more personal about, what it was like to finally get into Formula One. These two things that sound different but are definitely related. I think I would have more confidence in myself, and also get very comfortable with rejection. There's probably going to be a lot of rejection. It's about persistence and perseverance and knowing that you're good enough to do it. You just maybe have to find whatever path that is to get there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like that attitude, I think, is the thing that sets people apart. And it's like we said, like Alex, like writing letters, like doing things that are creative, that get your foot in the door, and just get your foot in the door. And if you maximize for people and for work experience in whatever form that takes, you will find your way to whatever position you want to be in. And I found, at least speaking for myself, that where you thought you wanted to go isn't necessarily where you end up or where you want to be in the end. And you learn a lot of that from the experiences that you take on. And so being with amazing people who support you and make you feel great and make you feel like you can make mistakes and be okay is the most powerful thing. All right, I think we're going to open it up to questions. So give us 1 second and we'll grab it in the room. We'll relay it if you can't hear it. Great. So the question was, heard some people talk about two-wheel racing, and is breaking into that sport, MotoGP or other two-wheel classes, is that different from the way that you've talked about getting into Formula One, Formula Two, Formula Three?
I would say it's very similar. When you're breaking into that junior series, there is sort of like the interview process that you have to go through, of course. I think the difference I had when I was going from high tech from Haas was that because I'd already had the experience, there it was kind of like, well, we know that you've done certain things and you can sort of prove that. I would say it's quite similar though, just from my personal experience.
One and how each of them have their own unique experiences with managing the cost gap, whether it be from in-race like Intel operations or back at the factory, and how they've navigated that.
Great question. So the question was, I don't know if you've heard it, but how does the cost cap play into like the day-to-day today? How has that changed the way that you approach problems or staffing teams? How do you think about the sport differently now that there's that measure in place?
So I'm lucky because I sit outside of this, so marketing and stuff that doesn't really come into cost cap. So we can have some fun this side. So all the partners and stuff that you'll see, all the brands and stuff on our polos, they all give the teams money, they all get sort of divvied up across the team. And I'm really dumbing it down here, but there's obviously more technical ways of wording this, but marketing sits outside of the cost cap here. So we can do things that are, we can be a bit more experiential and do things that the other teams might not be able to. So I have a very separate or different approach to the other guys on the call here.
But yeah, for sure, it's changed how all the teams have to approach any development, because it's really you have to be efficient with how you spend your money to add performance on the car, and that's in terms of people as well as the parts themselves.
has it opened up more opportunity for people, even in more junior roles, to get their hands dirty in more things, maybe? Like, because you may not be able to bring on another person, so you need to take on more work. Like, has that played into it at all? Any other dynamics?
I would say that it has, possibly, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a good thing. I think we probably all have a slightly complicated relationship with the cost cap. I think maybe what you were saying, Alex, is that it's both parts and people under one cap, and that can be quite difficult when you have maybe a technical director who's saying we can hire another person, or we can have another floor upgrade. So it's definitely an issue.
Put in a little bit. It will. I think it will eventually. The cost may be on staffing, because when I joined Brackley, so your Mercedes end of the world, when it was British American Racing, there was 200 of us, and that was a big team. Last time I remember, and like I said, I have a son at Mercedes. I think their wage bill was public. I think their wage bill was about 93 million. You've got to make a car off the back of that. And we did used to put a car around the track with a lot less staff. An F2 team is locked out at 12 staff. That's all they can have at the track. So it's how you play your resource. It's how you move your chessboard, your pieces on your chessboard about. If you want the best, have the best. You're probably going to have the worst car. It's however you want to land at that. At the end of the day, I'm in F2, 3 and 4 these days. So because of that, where one makes, we're off the shelf. But our F14, for instance, has 9 cars, because we can do that. And I think that's the bit that the budget cap is causing a little bit of a problem. Things change in Formula One. I didn't say they always change for the best. Something that was mentioned earlier about time off. My wife used to fly out to 2 or 3 races to see me when I was racing, because you could do that then. And on top of that, the curfew. The curfew, it was brilliant before we had curfew. But then curfew came in, and all you guys that are still trackside, you all know now that you work to curfew. Well, we never did. We never needed to, because there wasn't one. And, so that coupled with budget caps and bits and bobs like that, we'll see. We'll see.
All right. Okay. All right. Then why don't we start wrapping it up? So I think the last thing would just be, is there anything anyone else wants to add? Any final remarks? We can go through everyone real quick and see if there's anything else you want to, parting wisdom or advice for people. Maybe Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think maybe just coming back to breaking into it. If you have a passion for it, absolutely go for it. Whichever series of motorsport you pitch yourself in at, just don't be afraid. Once you get your break in, and you will, the whole world will open up to you. So be bold and be persistent.
Totally agree with Alex on the try as many opportunities as you feel comfortable with, and have that confidence to really go for it. Personally, for me, I was really doubting myself when I was applying for these sorts of roles, but now that I'm here, I can look back on that and think, yes, I was good enough to do this, and I still am. And going to George's point about being within junior formula, it's fantastic to be within motorsport. You don't necessarily need to aim for Formula One from the offset. Formula 2, 3, 4 are all fantastic places to be, as well as hypercar and as well as any other form of motorsport. So there are fantastic opportunities available, and just go for it.
That's for Shy.
Well, look, again, mine's different. So from maybe a content perspective, because I like the other guys' answers on what they said. So from like a content perspective, I think, if you are a creative and you're trying to step into this world, I think try and develop your own style. And the other guys have said it, and we've said it multiple times on this call, but there are other series that you can gain experience in. Try and do that. Try and attend any races. There are free events you can go to. From purely a content perspective, you can buy a cheap camera. You can shoot the content that you like. Find your own style, and you'll find the more you shoot, the better you'll get. The more content you create, whether it's photos or videos. Every team needs it now, and they really do need it. They're not just competing on track anymore. They're competing on social media. All the content that we create is competing with other teams. The speed at which we create them, the speed at which we post them, they're all in competition with other teams. So find your own style. Definitely try and get some experience. And I know you're going to hear that across every other job you go to. Get experience even before you're allowed to have experience. It's genuinely just like we all, I'm sure, went to races when we were younger, and we were able to attend these places and take a camera along, see what you can get. Just be creative, and I have no doubt that if you really want it, you'll make it happen. It'll work out for you.
Just coming back, I forgot one thing that I wanted to add. I've seen previously on various social channels, there was, I can't remember where it was, but there was a post that somebody mentioned about getting into motorsport, and there was a comment saying, oh, well, unless you go to Oxford or Cambridge, the CV just gets thrown in the bin. That's just not true. You can come from so many different backgrounds. Going from George's perspective, being within the army and the fire service, you can get into motorsport that way. I went to it wasn't exactly a top university where I went to, and I was studying in a completely different industry, really. You don't necessarily have to be from the best of the best universities. You just have to have those skills that are beneficial to motorsport, really. And that's what we really look for. People that are passionate and people that have the skills that we really need.
Yeah, related to that, I actually asked my manager not that long ago, what made you pull me in for an interview? Because it is so competitive, and I was really curious. And he said, oh, it's because you worked at CERN. That sounded really impressive. I mean, that sounds like that's nothing related to motorsport. That's an experience that I had that I really enjoyed, and that was fantastic as a physics major. But things like that can make your CV stand out, tailoring it to each job, that sort of thing is really important. And also, don't undersell yourself.
All right, George, any final thoughts?
I guess just be positive. I think there's something for everyone in this industry, no matter what part of it is. And like the guys have all said, if you want to be in Formula One or whatever, I have a few little contracts with that other dodgy mob called Formula E. And even they exist. I don't know why, but they exist. Anyway, I suppose, looking at it like that, I mean, it's a good job you'll get in it. And I can say wholeheartedly, especially on the back of what was said earlier on about your CVs going in, and at least you got some reply back from HR. I do not file CVs in the bin. I look at everybody's CVs and I reply to them all personally. And for the younger people, and Josh will back me up. It's handy having you here, Josh. I bring them in. I bring them on site. I have grads, school children, you name it, they all come on here so they can see what they want to be one day, because they never get an avenue to see it. We all love Monaco. We all love Monaco because the fans are just on the other side of the fence. You know? That's it, really. Come and join. We're not that bad. Right.
Speaking from experience, you sold me from all the conversations. I think it's been great. I think the one other thing that wasn't mentioned but came through with the points that were made throughout the presentation was, I think the last thing for me that I take away is like find people who can all support you in this. And so that starts before you even get a job. There's a community that we wanted to give a shout out to, Racing Roles. That's students who are coming together to help others understand these roles, find these roles, talk about these roles, and be coaches for one another. And I think even before you find professionals and mentors for you in that, like just finding other people who are in your same shoes, maybe a year or two ahead, and can tell you stories. I know that's how it got me started in my career, and I'm sure it's the same for all of you. So thank you all for the time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think it's going to help a lot of people who are listening today, who are here in the room in New York, and who watch this in the future to find their footing in the industry. And so it was a pleasure to talk to you. And I do want to give a quick shout out to NYU School of Professional Studies for hosting us today. We have Devin in the room who helped coordinate this from a student perspective. Professor Gubar, Professor Antoniello, I'm butchering that now, and then Sandy DeShong, all of which who have been amazing partners in this. So thank you all for the time. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.